Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is going to dive deep into the future of Formula One, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single second of it. Ever wondered what really goes on behind the scenes when teams prepare for groundbreaking changes? Or how those decisions can either make or break their shot at the championship? Well, today's the day you find out. Stay with me because not only are we going to explore how these decisions shape the upcoming seasons, but there's also an exciting reveal at the end that will completely change how you view F1's 2026 regulations. Trust me, you're going to want to hear it all, so grab a seat, because things are about to get very interesting. Formula One is about to undergo one of the biggest overhauls in its history, with completely new technical regulations set to reshape the 2026 season. As a result, every team on the grid is now looking ahead and trying to figure out the best way to approach these massive changes. We're talking about a brand new engine, a car that's 30 kilograms lighter with a slimmer profile, and a total rework of the aerodynamic design. And here's the kicker, none of the development work being done for the 2025 cars will carry over to 2026. That's right, every bit of research, every innovation will be left behind. With budget caps firmly in place and limits on aerodynamic testing time, teams are facing a dilemma like no other. They can't just throw endless resources at this problem. They have to choose wisely. Do they go all in for the 2025 championship, or do they start planning ahead to gain an advantage for 2026? Getting a head start could be the key to dominating for years to come, but it's a risk. If you spend too much time on 2026, you might miss out on the glory in 2025. We've seen this scenario play out before in Formula One. In fact, the last time the regulations changed this dramatically, the entire balance of power in the sport shifted. For instance, when the new aerodynamic rules came into play in 2022, the ground effect floor technology transformed how the cars handled, altering the pecking order of the teams. In 2017, the regulations were tweaked to make the cars faster, ensuring that Formula One maintained its position as the pinnacle of motorsport. At that time, the LMP1 cars in the World Endurance Championship were getting almost as quick as F1 cars, and Formula One simply couldn't afford to lose its reputation as the fastest and most prestigious racing series on the planet. But every time these regulation changes happen, there's always the potential for one team to find an edge that puts them miles ahead of the competition for years. We saw it with Mercedes when they dominated after the 2014 changes, and Red Bull is currently riding high on a similar advantage after the 2022 regulations. It's clear getting ahead early can lead to years of dominance, but it's never guaranteed. Teams are now at a crossroads, and what they decide to do in the next few months will define the future of F1 for seasons to come. In the world of Formula One, strategy isn't just about race day, it's about planning seasons ahead. As we look toward 2026, the teams are facing a decision that could either give them an unbeatable advantage or leave them struggling to catch up. With budget limitations and restricted wind tunnel testing hours, teams can't just throw money at developing two competitive cars at once. Gone are the days of running simulations 24/7 to churn out cutting-edge designs. Now, every hour, every dollar, and every engineer's decision must be carefully weighed. For many teams, January 1st, 2025 is the starting line for their 2026 cars. That's the official green light to start working on next-generation designs. But that leaves a critical question: do they focus everything on their 2025 cars to go all in for the championship, or do they sacrifice a year, aiming for that early advantage in 2026? This choice could either make them champions for years to come or see them completely miss out on success next season. History shows us that mastering the timing of these changes is key. Mercedes is a perfect example, having seized their opportunity during the 2014 regulation changes. Red Bull, too, capitalized when the 2022 ground effect rules came into play, setting them up for a dominant run. Finding that crucial edge at the start of a regulation shift can make the difference between being a championship contender or an also-ran. But making that choice is anything but simple. Let's look at Haas, for instance. In 2021, they made the bold decision to completely write off that season, hoping to get a jump on the new regulations coming in 2022. Financial struggles forced their hand, leaving them with no choice but to prioritize the future over the present. The result? A car that was essentially a relic from the previous season and two rookie drivers struggling at the back of the grid. Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, in what could only be described as a season-long battle of survival, finished the year dead last without scoring a single point. To add insult to injury, the cost of repairing crash-damaged cars only added to the team's woes. The gamble was massive, and while Haas did improve in 2022, the moral of the story was clear: betting everything on future success doesn't always pay off in the short term. But that doesn't stop teams from making these tough decisions again and again. Learning from the struggles of teams like Haas, other big players in the sport are determined not to make the same mistakes. Mercedes, for example, has made it clear that they won't be sacrificing their 2025 season. Despite the looming 2026 regulations, team principal Toto Wolff has emphasized that Mercedes is aiming to stay competitive every single year. "We're fighting for victories and podiums," Wolff said in an interview, "and that means we cannot simply write off any season." This is where it gets interesting every season, especially when there's such a massive shift in regulations on the horizon. Teams must make tough calls. Do they try to stay competitive in the immediate future, or do they focus on long-term gains? It's a balancing act. As Wolff explained, it's not just about choosing between winning this year or next year. It's about being smart, transitioning people and resources smoothly into the future without losing sight of the present. For Mercedes, the strategy seems clear. While the team will undoubtedly start shifting its focus to 2026 earlier than usual, they won't simply abandon the 2025 season. That would mean handing over a crucial year of potential wins and podiums. However, if the 2025 car proves to be uncompetitive right from the start, don't be surprised if Mercedes shifts its attention to 2026 much sooner than expected. After all, finding themselves stuck in the midfield or battling for P7 won't satisfy a team used to fighting at the front. Interestingly, not every team is taking the same approach. Williams, another historic F1 name, has a very different strategy in mind. Their team principal, James Vowles, recently hinted at a bold move for the British outfit, essentially writing off the 2025 season in favor of a stronger push for 2026. Williams is in a different position compared to the likes of Mercedes or Red Bull. They're not battling for race wins or championships, they're focused on climbing out of the lower end of the standings. For Williams, the choice makes sense. Instead of putting all their resources into 2025, a season where they're unlikely to make massive gains, they're betting big on 2026, hoping to catch their rivals off guard when the new regulations come into play. Vowles was clear about the challenge ahead. 2025 is going to be tricky for us. We're investing heavily in the future, and that means we're likely going to struggle next season. This strategy shift by Williams is significant, especially when you consider that they've assembled a strong driver lineup for 2025, with Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz set to drive for the team. On paper, that looks like a pairing capable of fighting for points, and in Sainz's case, even podiums if given the right car. But Vowles has made it clear that the 2025 car won't be one that's competing at the sharp end of the grid. Instead, the focus will be on preparing for the new regulations with the hope that all this groundwork will pay off in 2026. For a team like Williams, which has endured a long period of struggles after their glory days in the 1980s and 1990s, this is a bold decision. They're essentially gambling that sacrificing one season will allow them to come back stronger when the 2026 regulations kick in. And they're not alone in taking this approach. Several teams in the past have tried to do exactly what Williams is planning: lay low for a year to gain an upper hand later. However, as Haas discovered in 2021, this tactic doesn't always guarantee success. Haas spent an entire season at the back of the grid, but despite their early preparation for the 2022 regulations, they didn't exactly shoot to the front once the new rules were in place. While they did make some progress, it was far from the breakthrough they had hoped for. So for Williams, the challenge lies in making sure their gamble pays off in the long run. As for Carlos Sainz, this move is a particularly tough one to swallow. He's going from driving for Ferrari, one of the most prestigious teams in the sport, where he's been battling for podiums and even race wins, to a Williams team that's openly admitting they won't be competitive next year. It's a massive shift for a driver of his caliber. But Sainz knew exactly what he was getting into when he signed with Williams. He knew it would be a project, one that would require patience and long-term thinking. In fact, if he hadn't signed with Williams, he might have ended up at Sauber, preparing for their transition to Audi in 2026, a similar long-term project. Sainz's decision was far from easy. According to his father, legendary rally driver Carlos Sainz Sr., there were multiple offers on the table, and choosing Williams wasn't a straightforward call. But in the end, Sainz Jr. made his choice, deciding that Williams' project offered him the best chance to be part of something bigger. It's clear that Williams is aiming to rise from the ashes, but whether they can pull it off remains to be seen. While Sainz has taken on this challenge at Williams, it's clear that both he and Alex Albon understand what they've signed up for. They know that 2025 is likely to be a tough year, where scoring points will be a struggle, and competing for podiums will be out of reach. But the hope is that by investing in the 2026 regulations, Williams can finally return to its former glory. As Vowles mentioned in an interview, we're not aiming to just survive in the midfield, we want to be back at the top, competing for wins and championships. And that takes time. The decisions teams make in the next year will shape the landscape of Formula One for seasons to come. Every team is walking a tightrope, balancing the need to stay competitive now with the opportunity to dominate in the future. For some, like Mercedes and Red Bull, the challenge is to maintain their winning ways while planning ahead for 2026. For others, like Williams and perhaps even McLaren, the gamble of focusing on 2026 could be the key to climbing back to the top. At the heart of this dilemma is the unique unpredictability of Formula One. No team knows for certain if their bet will pay off. A wrong move now could mean years of struggling to recover, while a well-timed focus on future regulations could lead to a golden era of dominance. Teams will have to be shrewd, balancing risk and reward, and only time will tell which strategy will prove to be the most successful. As we move closer to 2026, fans are in for an exciting ride. The sport is on the brink of another revolution, one that promises to shake up the established order and perhaps even produce a few surprises along the way. Will the big names like Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari continue to lead the charge? Or will the likes of Williams and McLaren rise from the shadows to challenge for the crown? It's a thrilling time to be a fan of Formula One, and the next few seasons will be pivotal. So, what would you do if you were in charge of an F1 team? Would you go all out for glory in 2025, or would you play the long game and focus on the potential of 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest F1 news and insights. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.